Hey, what's up everybody? It's Joe, Content Production Manager over at abugames.com, part of Team ABU's Alpha Wolves, and today I'm stoked to be on this side of the microphone for once, to be bringing you a Snap Keep for a deck that I am particularly passionate about. Last weekend, we had our first in the new Win a Duel series that we're doing. It's a series of monthly Legacy tournaments where you could win a duel. And the first one was for Plateau. And I didn't have much time to prepare, and I was starting to panic about what deck I wanted to bring. So I decided to go back, fall on my favorite, an old standby, and I gotta tell you, it was a blast, bringing Legacy Goblins back to the table. Alright, so let's break it down. The first thing that you should know about Legacy Goblins is there's a core that belongs in almost every Legacy Goblins deck. Most Goblin pilots are going to rattle off these 12 to 16 cards, depending on what you're doing. And that's going to be 4 Goblin Lackey, 4 Goblin Ringleader, 4 Goblin Matron, and in most cases, 4 Aether Vial. Lackey's amazing, obviously, especially now that Deathrite Shaman is gone. Don't rest in peace. But anyway, yeah, so Goblin Lackey, it's a 1-drop for 1 red. Whenever he successfully deals combat damage to a player, you can choose a goblin card in your hand and put that goblin into play. So this little dude, total value engine. Imagine dropping things like Goblin Ringleader off of him. A Goblin Ringleader is a 4-drop, 3 colorless and a red, 2/2 with haste. But when he enters the battlefield, you can reveal the top 4 cards of your library and put all goblin cards revealed this way into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So that's just one of the best turn 2 plays I can imagine is turn 1 Lackey, swing it on turn 2, drop a Ringleader, fill your hand with a bunch of value. It's awesome. And then another piece of the core is, of course, the Goblin Matrons. 2 colorless and a red, 1/1, but when the Matron comes into play, you can search your library for a goblin card, and if you do, put it into your hand. So this is just an amazing goblin fetch, basically. So depending on whatever matchup you're facing, you can drop your Matron, either off a Lackey, a Vial, Hardcaster, whatever. Go through your deck and find any of those special, like, silver bullets that you're looking for whatever specific matchup you're facing, because Goblins, at its heart right now, is pretty much a toolbox deck, or a kind of taxi deck. I hear a lot of people around here call it, oh, you're playing goblins and taxes, or whatever, you know. Because a lot of the stuff that you're doing with this deck is designed to tax your opponent's mana, mess with their creatures, and just outvalue them. And then the next piece, I think, of that, core that I was talking about, at least in my mind, gotta be Aether Vial. I know there's a lot of Goblin lists lately that aren't running the, full 4 vials, or some that are taking them out altogether. But, I just love playing Aether Vial decks. I don't know, it's one of my favorite things. So anytime I'm bringing Legacy Goblins to the table, you can bet that I'm going to have probably all 4 Aether Vials. Because when your land base is designed to be taxing your opponent's mana, or whatever, Vial, just amazing. Bringing in, like, Ringleaders end step, or Stingscourger just to bounce stuff. I don't know. I just love the different avenues of play that an Aether Vial gives you. Okay, so let's go ahead and just run through the rest of the cards here in the deck in no particular order. We'll start with the creatures. I had a 1 of Skirk Prospector. Any of you who have been opening a lot of Dominaria recently probably recognize this fella. It's a 1 red, 1/1, but with the ability, you can sacrifice a goblin, add a red mana to your mana pool. So this is just another one of those cards that helps you advance the board, get out more creatures quicker, all sorts of different kind of cool value plays you can do with him. And then I was running, and this card, I think, is a new all-star for Legacy Goblins, probably Modern Goblins too. I'm so excited about Goblin Cratermaker. I was running 2 of these, and honestly, when I looked at the Eldrazi on the field, and the amount of show and tell that was here, I really wish that I had actually been packing 3. This card is awesome. It's a 1 colorless and a red, 2/2 creature, but he has the ability to pay 1, sacrifice Goblin Cratermaker, and you can choose to either deal 2 damage to target creature, which is pretty decent, or Destroy target colorless non-land permanent. Now, that's what I'm talking about. Blows up Emrakul, blows up Eldrazi's, blows up Ensnaring Bridge. Dude, whatever. This card is just boss, and the art super cool as well. After that, I was packing 2 Goblin Piledriver. This is another card that I really like. Another 1 colorless and a red. He's a 1/2 Goblin Warrior who has protection from blue, which means protection from True Tame Nemesis, which is pretty decent a lot of the time. And whenever Goblin Piledriver attacks, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn for each other attacking goblin. So this can just get insane if you have a ton of other little goblins on the field attacking. Piledriver is just going to get huge, and your opponent's gonna have to find a way to deal with that, or they're going to lose really quick. Next up, we have a card that I had tested a little bit when it first came out, and I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I saw some of the people on the Legacy Goblins Facebook page talking about it the night before this tournament. Decided to show up, use some of my trade credit to buy a foil and slam it in my deck, and that's Grenzo Havoc Raiser. He costs 2 red, and he's a 2/2 legendary Goblin Rogue, and it's kind of interesting abilities. It's from one of the conspiracy sets. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, choose 1. You can goad target creature that player controls, or exile the top card of that player's library. Until end of turn, you may cast that card, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast it. And that second ability is really what we're going for. And it's pretty cool because that applies to any creature that you have connecting with the opponent when Grenzo's on the battlefield. And I just seemed like super useful against combo decks, or, you know, really just any deck being able to exile those cards. I only got to connect once against a Miracles player, and it was pretty sweet because it ended up exiling like the top 3 cards of his deck, which all would have been pretty good against me. So I'm not sure I'm sold on Grenzo in the list, but I'm definitely going to keep testing him because that was pretty awesome. Then I was packing 3 Mogg War Marshals. This is good to get more bodies on the table. It's 1 colorless and 1 red, a 1/1 creature. When he enters the battlefield or is put into a graveyard, you can put a 1/1 red goblin creature token into play. He's got an echo cost of 1 colorless and a red, which I almost never pay because a lot of the time my goblins have haste. So you drop him, you get a token, you can swing in when he dies, or when you don't pay the echo cost, you get another 1/1 goblin token. And it's just, you know, you gotta have bodies on the floor. So this is good with Skirk Prospector if you need more mana, or if you've got a Lord pumping him up. It's just, you know, useful to have a bunch of little dudes. And then I was packing 1 Stingscourger, and this is just one of my favorite pieces of the deck, especially against decks like Show and Tell or Reanimator or whatever. Another 1 colorless and a red. It's a 2/2. He's got an echo cost of 4, which is kind of sad. But when Stingscourger enters the battlefield, return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. So a lot of times when I'm playing a matchup where I know this is going to be useful, I'll fetch him up, hold him in my hand, have an Aether Vial on too, and, you know, if they play a big creature that I'm just not going to be able to deal with, I'll bump it back to their hand. This is also a really fun thing to play off a Show and Tell if your opponent's not going to be playing Omniscience, because it doesn't do anything against Omniscience, but if they try to Show and Tell in an Emrakul or a Grizzlebrand or whatever, when they flip over, the Stingscourger trigger can send it back to their hand, and a lot of time they don't have the mana to cast it again or whatever. So Stingscourger, all-star. Next up, we have a card that I haven't really been seeing played in a lot of Goblins lists lately, but back in the day, in all the red-white lists, Thalia, Guardian of Thraben was just all about being in Goblins. I was looking at our local meta. I decided to bring back 3 of them in my list, just like the old days, and I think it was the right call for our meta. You know, I'm not sure I'd do it in a wide meta, like if I was going to a Legacy GP or something like that. I'd have to study some more, but Thalia is just so good, especially when you're trying to tax your opponent or whatever. So it's the, you know, 1 colorless and a white, 2/1 with first strike, and non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. So in this particular instance, the only non-creature spells I was really packing were the Aether Vials, so I felt safe having 3 Thalia to slow down my Miracles opponents, slow down basically anyone who wasn't playing creatures. And I definitely think for this particular tournament, it was definitely the right choice to have those in the main. And then I had one Gempalm Incinerator, which is an amazing card. 2 colorless and a red. It's a 2/1 goblin. That you can cycle it for 1 and a red. And when you cycle Gempalm Incinerator, you may have it deal X damage to target creature, where X is the number of goblins on the battlefield. Now, Gempalm is an amazing card, and a lot of lists are running 2 or 3. I don't really know why I only ran 1. I only had a couple hours really to think about the deck, and maybe 20 minutes to put the deck together because we were busy getting ready for Extra Life. And I just had been kind of underwhelmed the previous times I'd played Gempalm, and I think it was just me getting unlucky and getting angry at it, but I only ran the 1, and I didn't see it at all. So, I don't know. I do think Gempalm is a great card. I should probably find more room in the list for it, but whatever. Then I have 2 Goblin Chieftain. It's 1 colorless and 2 red for a 2/2 goblin with haste, and other goblin creatures you control get +1/+1 and have haste. So this is an awesome lord, gives all the boys haste, gives them +1/+1, and that's pretty useful in a creature deck like this, right? Then I had the 1 Goblin Sharpshooter, which is amazing against like token strategies or just getting in a little bit of extra damage. 2 colorless and a red. It's a 1/1. Goblin Sharpshooter doesn't untap during your untap step. Whenever a creature dies, untap Goblin Sharpshooter, and then you can tap him to deal 1 damage to target creature or player. So this is super useful against like Young Pyromancer tokens, or a bunch of unpumped Monk tokens off the Monastery Mentor or whatever. You can have a lot of fun with it if you have a bunch of your own tokens and the Skirk Prospector out, so you can just ping something, sack one of your own goblins, Sharpshooter untaps, ping something, back and forth through the loop. And if you've pumped out a lot of tokens in the course of the game, that's a lot of damage on board. And it's pretty awesome when that magical Christmas land comes together. Next up, I was running 3 Goblin Warchiefs. And in many of the times when you're going to be running Legacy Goblins, you're going to look for a split between like 5 to 7 Warchiefs and Chieftains. I went with 5 total, 3 Warchiefs, 2 Chieftains, because I wanted to have the ability to like pay less for my goblins, which Warchief lets me do. It's 1 colorless and 2 red, a 2/2. Goblins you control have haste, and goblin spells you cast cost 1 colorless less to cast. And that, when you're trying to outvalue your opponent, invaluable to be able to pay less for your dudes. And then the last creature I had, which also seems to be kind of falling out of favor in Legacy Goblins, but is just one of my favorite cards. If you follow my Fan Favorite Friday article, as you know, it's the card that got me into Magic, and that is Krenko Mob Boss. 2 colorless, 2 red, legendary Goblin Warrior. He's a 3/3. When you tap him, you create X 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, where X is the number of goblins you control. So I'm sure you can imagine tapping him, getting a flood of dudes on the table. It's awesome if you have a Chieftain on board or a Warchief so that Krenko has haste. Vial him in, drop him off a Lackey, whatever, and boom, you're just in Value Town. I don't know. Some people don't like him. I really do. It's one of my favorite cards. So when I was going to play my favorite deck for one of my favorite charities, you gotta believe I'm bringing Krenko. The lands, pretty simple. You gotta have 4 Cavern of Souls, so your goblins can't get countered. And then when you're going for the whole taxing plan, you're gonna have 4 Rishadan Ports and 3 to 4 Wastelands. I feel a little weird not running all 4. I ended up cutting one of my Wastelands for a Karakas, which is a pretty cool card. Again, useful against Reanimator or Show and Tell. But those are like the main utility lands that you have. Rishadan Port's great for tapping down your opponent's lands. Wasteland, obviously destroying their lands. And when you have a Vial suite on the table, or a Thalia, making them have to pay extra for stuff, just awesome being able to tax them like that. So you're going to want some fetch lands. I ran in 5 lands that could get red. I mixed them up, whatever red ones that you have on hand that can also get your plateaus is going to be fine. You know, I guess some people are like, yeah, mix them up so they can't get surgical extraction or whatever. I just grabbed the first ones that were in my binder, and it happened to be a good mix. And then 4 mountains, 2 plateaus. Gotta have that red, you gotta have white for Thalia, and the stuff in your sideboard. So, speaking of sideboard, mine was a total mess for this event. Like I said, I was pretty unprepared for the event. Hadn't thought a lot about what to board. But I had 3 Chalice of the Voids, thanks to my friend Ben. Shout out Ben, thank you for lending those to me. Those are great against, you know, decks that play spells, basically, like Burn, Delver, whatever. Chalice of the Void stops them from playing a lot of, usually you're going to put it on 1, so 1 mana spells, sometimes on 2, depending. It's a great sideboard card. I had 2 Pithing Needle. Pithing Needle's great, being able to stop activated abilities, unless they're mana abilities in this case. So that's pretty great against Planeswalkers, all sorts of stuff. I had 2 Sudden Demise, which was useless in this tournament, I think, because there were like no creatures running around. I was packing Sudden Demise back in the day when Curtis was running Elves all the time. So let me tell you, Sudden Demise is great against other tribal decks. You can choose a color. Sudden Demise deals X damage to each creature of the chosen color, and it's X in a red. So that's pretty boss. I had 1 Surgical Extraction. Wish I'd had more. I only own 1. I didn't have time to borrow anymore, so that's why that happened. But being able to choose a target card in a graveyard and then strip it from their graveyard, hand, and library, that's amazing. I wish I'd had more against Dredge. 1 Containment Priest to stop non-token creatures entering the battlefield if they weren't cast. That's pretty awesome against, you know, Show and Tell, Reanimator, that sort of thing. 2 Ethersworn Canonist to slow down the spell decks. I had 2 Rest in Peace to combat against, you know, Reanimator and Dredge and stuff like that. 1 Blood Moon, because there's a lot of non-basic lands in Legacy. And 1 Pyrokinesis to, you know, just remove creatures. So, that's the deck. It was a lot of fun. I think I'm going to probably keep playing it. It is my favorite Legacy deck. Going to be making some changes. If you have any ideas on changes you think I should make, suggestions, whatever, love to hear it. Shout out to the Legacy Goblins Facebook group. Y'all are amazing. I love reading all of your tournament reports and deck ideas. So thanks a lot for building that community. I really appreciate being a part of it. Huge shout out to Chris O'Berry from Team ABU, the Alpha Wolves, for running this tournament and starting it. We've got another one coming up in December, so check our Facebook page if you want to win a Taiga. And, you know, we're looking for out-of-town people to come, so, you know, Oregon homies, Washington people. If you're looking for a place to stay, hit us up on the Boise Magic Players Facebook, and we'll find something for you, because we'd love to have just a big, awesome Legacy tournament on this side of the country. Once again, everyone, my name is Joe from ABU Games, Team ABU, the Alpha Wolves, signing off. Have a good one.